So if you have an older version of Lightroom, and in fact, I can make this look like an older version of Lightroom by going down here to camera calibration and changing this thing called process from 2012 to 2010. So I'm going to this area called camera calibration, and I'm changing this setting called process. This means what kind of math the sliders work with. Should it be the current stuff that they invented most recently, or should you use the stuff they invented back in 2010? And if I choose that, now if I scroll up, these sliders look different. Now instead of having shadows and highlights, we have recovery and fill light. So if you're working with an old version of Lightroom, you might have this setup for your sliders, where you see how we have recovery, fill light, that kind of stuff. If this is what you see and you have the new version of Lightroom, you'll notice an exclamation point down here. You see that guy? That means this has been adjusted with an old version, and so we're giving you the old sliders so we don't change the look of your picture. If I click on that, it would update it and give me the new sliders, so I could use the newer version. But if you have an old version of Lightroom, you'll be stuck with these sliders because it doesn't have the new stuff built in. Fill light with the old version is somewhat similar to shadows. Recovery is similar to highlights. You still have exposure, you still have blacks, although I think of these differently. I think of exposure as the same as whites in the new version, because this exposure will work on the brightest part of your picture, which is what whites does in the new one. I think of this brightness slider as more like the exposure slider in the new version. So what I'll do is I'll write down the equivalents on the board during the break, and that way those of you using older versions can get a better sense for it. But know that upgrading to the newer version is like going to a decade forward in history as far as technology goes. It is dramatically better. I mean ridiculously dramatically better. So it is beyond worth upgrading. Because if I did fill light and I moved it to an extreme in the old version, I would see a line around the edge of a bright object where it touched a dark one. It would look like I traced the edge with a pen, and that doesn't happen with the new version. If I brought up clarity, buildings and trees would look like they're glowing. That doesn't happen in the new version. So the new version is dramatically better. I would really suggest upgrading. Okay? So anyway, I'll write those down up here when we're at break.
You're so thorough. We appreciate that about you, Ben. We do have quite a few more questions, so I think we're going to have to hopefully schedule some more time.
Yeah, we'll do it when we come back. Okay, you can ask some more.
All right.
So I think after lunch, we can start off with a few more questions. Then I can go in, because talking about color doesn't take as much time. And so we have more leeway in there for questions.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to take a 45-minute break for lunch. We just want to let you know